Okay, how's that? There we go. I'm sorry about that. Um, Actually, hold on one second. I'll be right back. All right, let's start this over again. My camera is still not focusing properly because I don't know how to use these fancy cameras, but it's going to be great when I get it. Okay, cool. So thanks everybody for joining me to talk about suspense and this stuff. I'm sure glad that's not showing up. Woo! Viewer activity. What? I don't know. No super chat. Okay, I don't know what to do with this stuff. Let's. I'm gonna pop this out. Let me pop this out. Pop out chat. There we go. And we're gonna put this over here. I'm also gonna bring. Oh, look at this. What is that? Oh, could that maybe be a new course that was just released minutes ago? Yes, indeed. I think it is. Go check that out. Okay, but this is what we're here for. And actually, I think on Spectrum, we had some people ask questions here as well. And that was not be there. Okay. Ask me anything about testing. I think on testing library, somebody asked a question here as well. And I hope you ask some questions because we're going to be chatting and it's going to be fun. I don't think anybody asked on Discord, so we're just going to stick with these places. And we've got your chat right here. Boom, on the right and the left here. Except I said those in opposite order of what they actually were. But yeah, okay, and then I'll also be looking in the chat, as you can see, for this. So yeah, sorry that my camera is fuzzy. I don't know why it is that way. I don't know how to use these fancy cameras. But don't worry, I'm gonna reorganize this whole office really soon, and the video quality is gonna be amazing, and it's gonna be awesome. It's just not right now because I don't know why. Okay, cool. So let me just make sure we're here. We'll show that. That looks like a legit question. Okay, cool. See, whenever I say okay, cool, Google, my phone thinks I'm saying okay, Google, which I'm not. And sorry if I started your phone. Okay, cool. So let me answer the questions that people have been asking. Before I do that, testingjavascript.com, in case you don't know, is a course that I have. It's a self-paced workshop, the best place to learn about testing JavaScript anywhere, and it's fantastic. So you can read through this. I have like a little intro video of me saying, hey, this is awesome. I'm so excited that you're going to join me to test stuff. But yeah, then we've got a bunch of these individual modules. There are 8 total, bunch of interviews with people, some really cool printable things, including transcripts, which are like really, really good. So if blog posts are more your thing, then that's like a blog post version of the videos. So you'll like that. And yeah, right now we're on a huge sale, 40% off. So you'll enjoy that. And before anybody asks me, yes, we do support purchase parity pricing. So if you're in a country that has lower purchase price parity stuff, then that should appear right above the pricing information there. We do have a 30-day money-back guarantee. A bunch of developers say that it's awesome. So yeah, that's what this testing JavaScript thing is all about. So let's go ahead and answer some questions. First question here. Hi, Ken. Is this the right way to test mention context? So let's take a look at the code sandbox that they've got here. And I'm going to squeeze this one down just a little bit. And we're going to move this one. Here, actually, I'm using this app called Divi, and I like Divi, and it's great. That's what we're going to do. Actually, maybe this can fit in one column. Nope. We're going to do 2. Okay, so I've got an update available. Let's go ahead and snag that update. So this person, I looked at this code sandbox earlier, and you've got a context for a confirm modal thing, and your app is using it, and this person just wants to make sure that they're testing this component properly because it is using this use confirm, which is a hook that ultimately is using where's use confirm? Yeah, it's using context, and it's using it's actually structured in the way that I teach people how to structure their context and expose context, which is cool. So yeah, so let's see if this is tested in a good way or in a way that I would test it, I guess is what they're asking. It looks like the test is passing, so that's good. Displays the confirmation modal on delete. That sounds like the type of thing that you would ask a manual tester to test, right? And so that's a good thing. We want to have our test resemble the way that software is used, and so that requires that your test is written in the way that a manual tester would test it. So we're going to render the app or render the component that's rendering your context consumer. And here they're specifying the wrapper as the confirm provider. Typically, you're going to have a single wrapper for your app that has like all of the providers. And so more often, here we'll look at testing library React. And right here where is setup, we've got this all providers thing where you provide that to your wrapper, and then you actually just make a custom render and export that, and then you'd import this file instead of React testing library, so that your render will always have all the providers provided. So that would be one change, but I'm guessing you wanted to make it simple, and so that's why we're doing it this way. But yeah, so we're wrapping it in the confirm provider. That works great. Getting initial, here we're getting by a regex that ignores case, and that's what I recommend. Don't do a string in here because with a string, well, you can actually with a string say you don't care about case, but I prefer just to use a regex and with the ignore case flag. That way, if you change casing, then that's fine. The user doesn't care what case it is. It could be all caps, it could be all lowercase, it could have an uppercase first letter, it could be title case, whatever. Doesn't matter to the user, and so it shouldn't matter to your test, and that's why I recommend the regex with the ignore case there. Then we're going to click on, so yeah, we're first going to expect that initial is in the document. So yeah, I guess that is specific to this scenario. We're going to click on the delete button. We're going to make sure that we have the confirmation modal in the document, and then we're going to click on cancel, and then here we're waiting for a DOM change to happen. I actually would not recommend that, and the reason why we may be changing wait for DOM change and removing it possibly, but the reason for it is unfortunately a wait for DOM change just waits for the next DOM change. And so if React does a DOM change and then there's effects and then it does another DOM change or something, if you restructure it a little bit, then this test could actually break, but not actually break the user experience. And so that's why I typically don't use wait for DOM change. And instead, what I would do is it looks like the next thing we want to verify is confirm modal is no longer in the document. So what I would do is I'd say wait for element to be removed. We have a thing that's just for this exact thing. So we're going to wait for element to be removed, and then we're going to snag this same thing here. We'll just wait until this query doesn't return an element, and unable to find that could be because multiple elements. Yeah, okay, so what it looks like is happening is as soon as we could cancel, that element actually is removed. And so, like synchronously, and so we don't find it. So I think actually we can actually give the confirm modal here instead, and it will wait for that element to no longer be attached to the DOM. Maybe, wait for element to be removed. Let's look at the implementation here really quick. Actually, we're going to want DOM testing library. I'm not going to spend too much longer on this, but I do want to give you some good advice. So here we start out, we return the new promise. And right from the get-go, we call the callback. And if there's no result, oh no, we're going to throw a specific error. So that's not what's going on here. But can we... okay, yeah, so we can't just return this. We have to return a query that gets it. So this should definitely work, and I'm not sure why it's not working. Yeah, that should not be happening. I'll wait for that. Huh. So what's happening here is we're running this code. We're calling this callback. Let me bump that up a little bit. Calling this callback. That's throwing an error. And so then we, oh wait, sorry, throwing an error. Undone. Undone is called, where's undone? Yeah, right here. Where the timeout, disconnect, and reject the error. Okay, so, oh, okay, nope, that makes sense. Sorry, I should probably look at my own docs. So we're gonna do query by text so it doesn't throw an error. And that should work. Not return an element. Okay, well, gee whiz. So if this is happening synchronously, then we don't need to wait for anything to happen anyway, right? Maybe we'll find the element canceled. Canceled. To be in the document. Okay. Wait for DOM change. Okay, here. This is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna switch this one to find by text. We can await. Find by text, canceled, to be in the document. There we go. Okay, so, sorry, I just didn't understand the example as well as I thought I did. So basically what is happening here is we click on cancel, and before they were just saying, wait for the next DOM change before we make these assertions. And what I'm changing it to is I'm just saying, hey, this is going to be removed from the document immediately, so we can just get rid of that. Or we can make that assertion right away. And then we can say, let's wait for this until I can find some text that says canceled, and we'll just make sure that's in the document. And then we'll confirm, and we can make an update to that. So end of story. You're probably fine with wait for DOM change, but this is actually one thing that I kind of want to change pretty soon. Is I think we're going to change wait to sort of behave like wait for DOM change, except it'll accept a callback. Which it will continue to call your callback on DOM changes, or every 40 milliseconds. This is still in the air. And then from there you can return true if you want to continue, or wait until the next DOM change. And the reason for this is there could be multiple DOM changes based on a certain action, and we want to wait until all those DOM changes are done before we continue with the test. So anyway, hopefully that was useful in some way. Sorry, like this is unpracticed Q&A, but yeah, good luck with that. Again, you're probably fine sticking with wait for DOM change. Just know that if you insert another DOM change that happens kind of in between the action that you took and the final state of the DOM, then your test could break in that situation, which is why I made some of these changes. One thing that would not be harmful is you could just stick that there, and that would be fine too. That'll pass. But yeah, if this were all to happen synchronously though, then that's potentially not gonna, well, no, that'd still work even if it's synchronous. So you can feel free to do that. Okay, hopefully that was sort of helpful, and let's move on to, I'm actually gonna take a look at some of the questions in here to make sure that we stick it in context, in case you're asking questions about the questions that I'm answering. So just make sure that you didn't ask any questions about what I just did. Somebody's asking me to do more smiley face videos. So if you're wondering what that's all about, this is a blast from my past, kcd.im/smiley. This was like stuff I made when I was 14. And then I made one recently. And then this one got stolen and uploaded and got 4 million views on somebody else's thing, and I just barely decided to have them take it down, and they took it down yesterday. I kind of feel bad about it a little bit, but not too bad. So that's the real one. I actually, Kent Dot's Productions has 2 copies of this video uploaded. I'm not sure why I did that, but there they are. Okay. Cool, sweet. So just some more general questions. So I will continue on with the ones on Twitter first, and then I'll get to the ones here in the chat. Is it possible to test to have been called on a function nested component? Yeah. Want a code sandbox? Boom. Sweet. Thank you for the code sandbox, Diego. Let's make this happen. So we have an app. And in here, we have this put data thing. Okay, so how do you test that put data is called no matter what it does? So here, let's call put some URL. That's going to fail. So this is what I would recommend doing if you don't want to make that actual fetch call. Is let's go ahead and we'll make a test index. Oh, boo. Make a folder first. Test. And we got to fork it. And then we'll make a new file, index.js. And then actually what we're going to do is I'm going to move this to app.js so that we can test it in isolation from the rest of this stuff. Get rid of that, and get rid of that, and get rid of that, and get rid of this, and export default app. And then we'll import app from app, and get rid of all this. Whoops, not the style, so let's keep those. And get rid of that. Then we're going to rename this to app.js, and we'll import the app. So import React from React, import app from app, and import render from testing library React. Let's add testing library React. And ooh, fancy. That's cool. An update. Okay, so then we're gonna test makes fetch all when button on button click. And then let's get our button. So get by text, render our app, app, and get by text, all put button, and then let's get our fire event, click on put button, and that is going to fire our actual fetch request, and that's what we don't want to have happen. Okay, in our test, we're not actually going to make a real request. That's something for your end-to-end test to do. So how do we make this not happen? Well, this is what we do. So in pretty much every test base, this is something that I recommend. In fact, I might be able to find the snippet from Kent seed odds fetch after each. Boom, here we go. I'm going to grab that. Okay, we'll stick that there. So typically you do this in a setup file. So let's do setup test. Is that what it's called? Shoot, I can't remember. I think this last one, I forgot what the file is called. Let me just find out what the file is called. Setup test, yeah. Okay, so in here, that's where we're going to do this. And what we're doing is we're spying on the window fetch property, and we're mocking it to say, hey, this has to be mocked. And after each, we're going to clear all the mocks, and then we'll restore fetch to its original implementation after all, just because we like to clean up after ourselves. So with that, then we can get rid of this. And now, because we have that set up, when we click on this, we're not actually going to be making a network request. Instead, we're going to fall back to our mock implementation, or we should, and we're not. And why are we not? No. I think the reason for that is we're just using fetch globally. So let's do window.fetch, and that should work now. There we go. Could not find, yeah, this is garbage. Sometimes Code Sandbox has trouble with new dependencies added in the tests. It fixes it fine for the browser, but it sometimes has trouble with the tests. Okay, cool. So let's go to our tests, and it should be throwing an error, but it's not. So why is that? Let's console.log window.fetch. Let's look at our console. Okay. Oh, wait, there we are getting that error. Oh, am I mocking it once? No, mock implementation. Dot mock. Yeah, okay, we are getting a mock. We're getting an error, but it's not actually failing our test, which is strange. I'm guessing that's a Code Sandbox bug though. So we can continue. And what we're gonna do is we're going to expect window.fetch to have been called with stuff. Okay, there we go. And now it was actually called with this stuff. So let's go ahead and do that. And there we go, that should pass. Oh, except not an array. it is multiple arguments. There we go. Boom. That's awesome. And then we can expect it was called one time only. That's always a good idea. Expect window.fetch to have been called times once. Okay, so that's how I would approach this. And actually, typically what I'm going to do is I'm not going to call window fetch directly in my components. I'll probably put that in a file called API. And then I might actually mock the API instead of fetch. Kind of depends. Might mock fetch directly and assert on that. But yeah, that's the approach, is basically just let's mock window fetch or mock whatever API you're using to hit your backend. And then things should work nicely and it'll be great. So, man, every time I look over and see that my focus is out of focus, it makes me not happy. Also, I have lights right up here that shine down on me, and so like my eyes look really dark, and it's kind of scary. And that's why when I reorganize my office, I'm going to have a bright light that's right here. It shines in my face, and it'll look really nice. You're going to love that. Okay, so that is what I would do. Oh, no, wrong one. Here's this. Okay, cool. Let me, I want to get to some more like non-code specific questions. So if I find any more of those, I might just not answer them right away. Okay. Great. I will answer this. Will this be re-uploaded on your channel? So the way that YouTube streams work is it always is on the channel at that URL. So just come back here and you'll be able to watch it again. Okay, so I'm learning to shift my thinking. This is from Adriana Rios. I'm not sure how to say your name, but it sounds great, and I like the unicorn. I'm learning to shift my thinking from testing implementation to testing like a user or a dev, but I'm still having trouble figuring out which level to start from, like import, the input, or the entire form. Can you talk me through your thought process as you set out start writing tests? Okay, so I've got 2 blog posts for you that you will probably find useful. So if we go to my search page to search for these, one is, let's see, start, no, let's find test. Can't remember what it's called. It's somewhere around here though. Okay, so this is one of them. That's the testing trophy. And the other one is, yeah, how to add testing to an existing project. So this is a good one. I'll go ahead and copy this in the chat. Why not? Hi there, Chris. We are friends. I know you. So this is a good one to kind of explain to you how I would get started. If I had no tests in a project, this is how I'd get started. So it doesn't really directly answer the question, but might be helpful to you. And then this one talks about the different levels of testing. So we got static, unit, integration, and end-to-end. And in here, I kind of discuss, here, let me bring this over here as well. Not only what the different levels, but kind of the types of tests that I write for these. And typically what I recommend doing is focus on, so focus on writing higher level tests like integration tests. And then when you have different edge cases and you find that your integration test is just doing the same thing over and over again to test different edge cases, then that's a good place to just break those out and handle those edge cases as unit tests. And unit tests also are super, super great for pure functions. So if you have some pure functions, then just test those directly. And then you can get like typical or general coverage for those things with your other integration tests. So great question from Adriana. Gavin Fitzgerald. Should lighthouse scores and bundle sizes be part of automated testing? Maybe perf testing thoughts. And I'll answer the second question second. So yes, Gavin, I think that lighthouse scores and bundle sizes are a great thing to include as part of automation testing. And Webpack actually has I think it's built in, Webpack size limit error. Oh no, performance. There it is. It was right there. Performance. Yeah, so you have this performance hints, and you can set that to be an error, and so it'll actually fail your build if you exceed the max entry point size. So I do recommend enabling that. I think that's a good idea, and that's basically a performance test for the size of a single chunk. As far as Lighthouse scores, I think that's a good idea as well. I've never done it myself, but I know that you can use Lighthouse, like a Lighthouse CLI, to run Lighthouse against your app, and it seems like a really good idea. Should E2E count toward UI and backend coverage stats? So I've got some stuff on coverage. Actually, do I have a blog post on coverage? Whoops. Yeah, I don't have a blog post on coverage, but I do have what test, or what is my short URL is what test. So how to know what to test, and in here I talk a little bit about code coverage and how I'm not as concerned about code coverage as I am for use case coverage. Where's use case coverage? There we go. Code coverage is not as good as use case coverage. So as cool as it is to do to cover lines of code, it's more important to cover use cases, and those are kind of hard to quantify and hard to track. But those are the things that you should be focusing on, and then you'll get code coverage naturally. Now, as far as tracking it and measuring it is concerned, I don't bother because the thing is that my end-to-end code, I want to make absolute certain that when I ship my application, or that the thing that I'm running my end-to-end tests against is the same thing that my users are going to see. This is like my last verification that things are actually working. It's going to give me the most bang for my buck. Well, a single end-to-end test is going to give me a ton of confidence, is what I mean. And so I want to make sure that that is running on my actual same code that my production code is running on. And currently, the code coverage tools will instrument your code for coverage, which means that it changes your code. And that's not something that I want to do for my end-to-end tests. So because I don't see code coverage statistics as a super important metric, it is important, but not super important. I just see running my end-to-end tests on my actual code, on the same code I'm going to send to my users. It just doesn't add up for me to make it worthwhile to include it in my coverage stats. So good question. Matt Peterson is wondering, let me zoom out just a little bit so I can recognize photos and stuff. I work a lot of spaghetti legacy code in my day-to-day, so I'm curious, can the way code is written make it untestable? Any advice for improving the testing situation in legacy apps? I don't have a blog post for this, but I should, because it's a great question. So yes, code, the way code is written can make it hard to test, not untestable. So if you have really spaghetti code, then the only way that you can, so the better organized your code is, the easier it is to test at a lower level, and even at an integration level. So if you have just a total mess of code, then probably the best way to test it is with end-to-end testing tools like Cypress. And so that's what I would recommend, is start out with Cypress, do some higher level tests, make sure you cover all of the really important stuff, and then you can slowly over time refactor things to make it easier to test. And we're not testing for testing's sake, right? So the goal shouldn't necessarily be, I want to make this easier to test. The goal should be, I want to make this easier to maintain. And part of making it easier to maintain is making it easier to test as well. So yeah, that's what I recommend. Start out with some higher level tests. And actually, you know what? This is a good blog post for that. Start testing. Is that what, did I make that? I'm going to make that really quick. So let's go back to, existing project. Okay, and I'm going to shorten, this is a fancy thing, start testing. Boom. Sorry, it looks like my stream stopped for a moment. OBS crashed. I'm using the latest version of macOS, and apparently OBS isn't ready for that, which is really frustrating and annoying. So sorry about that, but hopefully I'm back. Yes, it looks like I'm back. So yeah, so now we have that KCD IAM start testing, and you can reference that, and I'm going to just respond to this. Answered on the stream. Here's a link. Okay. Great. Next question. Vlad is wondering, minimum test coverage on enterprise product in %. What would you live with? So I can tell you what I won't live with. I won't live with 0%, and I won't live with 100%. I'll live with something that's in between, probably closer, like above 50%, but it's really hard to tell for sure. And there's a great talk about this by Aaron Abramov, not related to Dan, which clearly is the next thing people are wondering. And it was Assert.js, his talk there. This is a great, great talk. I would recommend people taking a look at sometime because it talks about specifically code coverage, but also, let's see, what test? So this blog post also would be a good resource for anybody wanting to know about that. Answered on the stream. Here are some links. And this one. Good luck. Smiley face. Okay, cool. So JD is wondering, whoops. JD is wondering, how do you think Storybook relates to testing? What would you consider building components using Storybook, a kind of TDD? Would the stories count as manual tests in your mind or something separate to be used alongside other tests? Great question. I think that this one, Storybook is great. It's a great way to develop your components. I see like Code Sandbox is a similar great way to develop components. I wouldn't see it as a replacement to testing. I do know that there are some tools that you can use to like automatically generate tests out of your Storybook stories, which I think is interesting. There was one a few years ago called Story Shots, and it generated a billion story or snapshots, and it's pretty useless. I've actually got something about that. Snapshots, effective snapshot testing, where I say, hey, be careful with snapshot testing. Yeah, so I see it not as a replacement for testing at all, but for manual testing, yeah, absolutely. And there was actually one place that I was where we would create our storybook, and it would auto deploy on our PRs so that you could play around with the storybook, and that was super, super helpful. Our designers loved it too because they could play around with the things as we were building them. They said, oh, this is wrong, whatever. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Let me just do a quick refresh here on Twitter and see if we missed any or if there are any new ones. Looks like that's all of them unless we have some replies. We got some replies here. Yep, nothing there. And that's it. Okay, cool. So let's move on to Spectrum here. So I read this earlier. And this person is doing some sort of political transparency ad stuff through a Chrome extension for Facebook. And the question is, it all comes down to, well, okay, let's just take a look at here. Ads are detected by looking for the word sponsored in the subheader like so, sponsored. And presumably to avoid ad blockers, Facebook actually renders each of these letters as an after pseudo element. Fascinating. Now we're able to figure this out for the functionality of the extension because we have more features than JSDOM has for checking the page as rendered. But my question is, if someone asks you to test something like this, which JSDOM doesn't seem to be able to do, how would you do it? I'd thought about using Puppeteer to test it, but our team's Webpack Babel config totally mangles the code before it reaches the Chromium instance to run. Okay, so I would maybe fix that. But Puppeteer seems like a pretty reasonable way. When you're limited by JSDOM, then that's unfortunate. You might also try Cypress. That's the first thing that I'm going to reach for if I want to run something in a real browser. I'll reach for Cypress. You might also try Puppeteer. Or then there's Karma, which is not all that fun to deal with, but it is another solution. Kind of a unique, interesting challenge. I wish you the very best luck. And I'm going to say answered on the stream. Enjoy. Okay, cool. And actually, let's edit that so that I'm more specific talking to this person. It would be nice to get some autocomplete there. What? I can't select it? Okay, right click on it. Right click on that. Okay, copy. No, not search. Well, that works too, I guess. Okay. Oh, there was autocomplete. That's weird. Very good. Okay, so for this side, this is the testing library Spectrum. I noticed there are a lot of people asking about how the best way to test child components or even components from libraries such as Material UI and React Drag and Drop. There is a doubt between shallow used in enzyme, but not possible on testing library. So I've got an answer for you. Shallow. So this is how I feel about shallow rendering. Here, let's answered on the stream. Here are links. Okay, so here's how I feel about shallow rendering. It is always a bad idea. Never do shallow rendering. It is just really, really bad for the health of your tests. And I explain why in this blog post, so you can enjoy that. Basically, it's just a whole bag of implementation detail. So given that, how do we test child components? Well, I've got a dev tip that you can take a look at here as well. Let me get a link to that. And we're going to look for shallow. Yeah, migrate shallow rendering React components to explicit component mocks. So this is what I'd recommend. And I dive even deeper into this in testingjavascript.com, so you can take a look at that as well. Testingjavascript.com on how to use component or how to use explicit mocks. And that's the solution, is to use explicit mocks. Now, on top of that, so React drag and drop is a special case. I'd probably mock that. Material UI, I may or may not mock that. Probably not. I just render the whole thing and it's fine. It's no big deal. And if your test breaks, maybe it's because you got that integration wrong. And that's an important thing too, is if you start mocking these components, well, then you need to start making sure that the integration between your code and that third-party component code is correct. So yeah, good luck with that. Richie is asking, I'm having a hard time selling the idea to my fellow developers about why writing integration tests are good, if not better, than writing traditional unit tests. Have you got any tips about this? Well, Richie, I answered on the stream. Here are links. So here's a link, acd.im what test. And let's go ahead. Oh, no, not what test. Write tests. There we go. So there's that. Where I justify my stance on the fact that integration tests are where you should be focusing most of your time. And the idea behind it is called the confidence coefficient. Oh, do I not say that word in here? Huh, that's interesting. I should probably actually say that word. But yeah, so there's a confidence coefficient when we're talking about tests up and down the spectrum, which is why I have the testing trophy. This was my original testing trophy. We now have one that looks a lot better on testingjavascript.com. Which actually you don't really see if you're logged in. So this is it. It looks really great. And actually another thing to include on this, let's get rid of some things that I don't need anymore, is trophy. This will take you to a blog post where I talk about the difference between, or the different levels. I kind of talked about this earlier, and the benefits of each. But to answer the question, the best way to convince people that integration testing is where it's at is by showing them how many tests you have to write to cover the same amount of code between unit and integration tests, and how those tests are going to break. So let's say you're unit testing this button component, and there are like 30 different configurations for, well, I don't know. I've got a bad. I'm not going to think of an example right now, but unit tests, you have to constantly be changing as you're refactoring your components, whereas integration tests will survive large refactors. You can even have an integration test that survives a refactor from Redux to context, or from React router to Reach router, or vice versa. And that's the huge benefit of integration tests, is they actually tell you that your application is still working, whereas unit tests will tell you that particular component is still working. But if you don't need that component in the future, then what good is the test? You're going to delete the test anyway. So hopefully that's helpful. Good luck with that. And now it's Christoph. Christoph, hey there. Answered in the stream. I don't even know what I'm going to say. Here are some links. Just posted a question about when to use integration tests over E2E tests, or to be more specific, when to use testing library over Cypress. Curious to know what you think. And yes, it will be, the live stream is available. answered in the stream, you can watch it now at the same link. And the biggest link to give to you is KCD IM Trophy. So that same blog post that I've shared a couple times. But yeah, so in that blog post, I say here we've got end-to-end tests. Those are generally better for that covering the happy cases and an entire user flow of like, okay, so the user's gonna add this item to their cart, and then they're gonna go add this item to their cart, then they're gonna remove this item, and then they're gonna go to the checkout page, they're gonna review this stuff, and then they're gonna hit checkout. That whole flow would be a great end-to-end test, whereas integration test is going to be, okay, the user's on this page, their settings page or whatever, they're going to change this setting, which is going to invalidate that setting and then whatever. And so we've got to make sure all of that's working together in tandem. And then unit test would be like, okay, so this component, when the user doesn't type enough characters in here, then it's going to get a min length warning or something like that. So you separate it logically in that way, and then you just write tests that fit into that mold best. So hopefully that's helpful. Enjoy. Okay, so that's all the questions on here. Let me just double check Twitter. Didn't get any more questions. Yeah. Is there a way to speed up the test? Just uses Babel to transpile. It's actually compile. Transpile is a made-up word, and I used to say transpile a lot, but I say compile now. Everybody says transpile, so I should not have even said anything. But each file, and it takes very long on CI. So my guess is the compilation is not the problem. But maybe, and if it is, then there could be some caching that you could do. Yeah, I've never really had too much of a problem with this myself. And like I have been in big code bases with many tests, and I'm guessing you're assuming that it's the Babel compilation process because it's taking a long time to get started. And if that's the case, we actually Babel. Let's see, where's my terminal? Let me find a project that is using compilation. That's probably a bad example. I just got this new computer, so I don't have all my projects on here, but there is. Boo! I'm so sorry about my OBS crashing. Hopefully OBS figures out the problem soon, because that is a real bummer. And I don't even know how long you've been gone. Okay, so OBS is having some serious problems. I am super sorry about that. This is really unfortunate. So OBS and Mac do play together super great normally, but I just upgraded my Mac to the latest version of Mac OS, and OBS wasn't ready for that apparently. So I'm so sorry. Hopefully I got this question answered mostly. I would investigate other slowness. I don't think that Babel is the problem. That's the answer. Okay, cool. And Google thinks that I'm talking to it again. I'm not. Okay. Now I can get to questions in here. All right. So, what is testing? Why do we need tests? Newbie question. That's wonderful. Great question. I've got a great post for you. If we go to my search, because I don't remember the short URL for this, what is a test? But really, what is a JavaScript test? This is exactly what you need, Mohammed. Read through that, and then testingjavascript.com. Actually, let me pull up incognito so we can see what you will see before you buy a course. But yeah, so fundamentals of testing JavaScript will go and give you the total fundamentals to answer that question super well. And you can get pro and have access to everything, or you can just get basic testing and just have access to the first three, which will give you the fundamentals of testing, mocking, and static code analysis. Really good stuff there. So enjoy that. How can you test an SVG icon when you are using an SVGR? This is the React SVGR thing. And React Suspense with Jest and React Testing Library async await does not seem to resolve it, rendering empty. I'm not sure I understand the question. It seems pretty specific. If you had a code sandbox for me to look at, then maybe I could help. Sorry. Okay, let's answer some more questions. How would you set up an end-to-end test, Cypress test using GraphQL? In your courses, you explain how to mock HTTP requests, but what about GraphQL and Apollo? I've never actually used GraphQL and Apollo. Well, okay, I've used GraphQL in a production app, and our usage of GraphQL was pretty simple, so I didn't have any trouble with Cypress there. Like we didn't use Apollo. So I'm not exactly sure how to help you with your question. What I would probably, my first step after like Googling around, which I'm sure you've already done, my first step would be to set up a mock server that would be my GraphQL backend. And actually, typically in my end-to-end Cypress tests, I'm going to run on the real server, on a real backend. So I wouldn't normally need to do this. Maybe that's why I didn't face the problem, is because I used the actual backend. So I'm not going to mock GraphQL requests. And in my course, where I show how to mock HTTP requests, I'm mostly doing that to show you what's possible. And sometimes it could be useful, but most of the time, I don't think it's useful to mock in your end-to-end tests. Like, it's an end-to-end test, so you don't need to mock it. I know that's not super helpful, but maybe try to not mock it and see how far you can get with that. And then like your integration test, yes, you're going to be mocking HTTP, but in there, you're also going to be able to mock Apollo as well. And so you can just mock out what those context providers are providing you. So you'll use module mocks for that. Okay, how much JavaScript should one learn to solve bugs in open source projects? Oh, that's an interesting question. My first pull request, firstpr.me, is a kind of a cool site. You can search for your first pull request. And this was mine. It was a pull request to the Play framework, and this was the update. It was to a Java project. I just updated the value, and this is a code comment. So no, you don't need to know a lot to start contributing to open source. So what I recommend is start contributing now, and if you get stuck, then that is how you learn, is by getting stuck. So yeah, that's my answer. Hopefully that's helpful. Hi. Okay. For an MVP product, should you implement testing BDD or TDD? If this was an MVP, just like minimal viable product, I probably wouldn't do anything beyond setting up ESLint and Prettier. I wouldn't do TypeScript. I probably wouldn't write any unit tests. I might write an integration test or two, and I would definitely write a couple end-to-end tests. But that's all. So the code coverage numbers would be pretty low because we're just moving fast. It's only when we say, okay, now we're going to commit to this code base, and we want this to scale, whatever. That's when testing becomes a really important part of the strategy. That's what I do. I know that some people get a lot of productivity out of test-driven development. I'm not one of those people, but if you are, then feel free to test drive all of your development. There's also Cypress-driven development, which I do talk about in my course, and it's really cool. I haven't done a lot of it, but when I have done it, it has paid off well. So you might try that as well, where you basically, instead of having your browser as you're making changes and stuff, you have Cypress, and Cypress is basically your browser. It has all the same dev tools and everything, so it works nicely. So yeah, and then anytime you make a code change, it'll refresh and whatever. But if you want it, you can like write a test and have it fill out the form for you automatically. It's really, really cool. So that might be something to look into. Can you please specify resources for starting with React and React Native testing for a beginner? Okay, so really good resources for testing is testingjavascript.com for sure. That's like the best resource, and it is super great for beginners because we start at the very beginning of what even is a test. And then my blog has a ton of content on testing. So yeah, lots and lots of stuff you can read about testing there. And then there's testinglibrary.com, which is like all the tools that you need, and that includes native testing library. And they actually have their own website for some reason. I'm not sure why, but they've got it, and it's great. Really, really similar API to React testing library, which is why you can learn one and you'll be able to use the other really well. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Okay. Any best practices or advice to run tests on a production environment? Okay, so a couple of things to think about. You're going to want to make sure that your tests can all run in total isolation from each other, and that if your test, a good kind of like thing to consider is you should be able to run every single one of your tests in parallel, because if often what happens is you'll have one test that modifies the database and then another test that reads from the database and gets that modification, and they break each other. And so typically your end-to-end tests are going to just run serially to avoid that problem. But if you're running in production, you can't determine what all the end users are doing. They're all hitting the database at the same time and all of that. So make sure that you can run your tests in parallel. Make sure that they're not going to be causing trouble for your users. So that is one thing. Yeah, let's see. Just make sure that you're doing all the setup and teardown, and even if the test fails, make sure you also do teardown. And this is what the before each and after all and all of those will make sure that those things happen. So yeah, make sure that you do teardown even if tests break, or if the test fails. It's a good idea. Absolutely a good idea to run some tests on a production environment. And it's actually normally pretty simple. The biggest challenge typically is going to be authentication and registration. So you'll want to have a user that's already got their email and whatever working, or have a test that does some sort of checking for that. That can be pretty difficult to test reliably. So I might make that a separate thing and have that run separately and fail on its own. But yeah, having a user in the database already so that you can work through things that way can be helpful too. So good luck on that. That's a good one. I don't have anything on that in testingjavascript.com, but you'll learn a lot about how to do something like that through stuff in the Cypress module. Yeah, sorry about that. What feedback have you received on testingjavascript.com? Anyone working primarily in Q&A? I don't know. I definitely have had people who are like QA engineers who have taken testingjavascript.com. Even full teams will get team licenses, and they have really enjoyed it. Yeah, the feedback is overwhelmingly positive. The vast majority of people don't exercise the guaranteed 30-day money back guarantee thing. And so yeah, people are just really happy with it. I've heard some people have gotten promotions for implementing the tips and tricks that I show you, and raises and that kind of thing, bonuses. So yeah, it's gone super well, and people are really happy with the testing. So that's great. Hey, thanks for buying the package. If I choose to choose between Redux and MobX, which one would you choose and why? I would choose neither, probably. I don't see any reason to choose Redux really. There are some use cases for it, but you don't have those use cases probably. And MobX, I don't see a huge reason for that either. What I mean, there are use cases for these things. Those use cases do exist. But here's how I feel about state in React. Let me just paste that there. I feel like React is a state management library, and you can get a huge distance just using React as your state management library. And I think one thing that I don't mention in here, maybe I should eventually, is one of the big problems that we have is we have two types of state. You have UI state, which is like dropdown is open, and you have server state, which is like things persisted in the database. Those two things are separate, but we combine them. We just say state in general, boom, it's all together. That's where things get really complex. And so if you have a nice abstraction for your backend state like Apollo, and then you have a good abstraction for your UI state like React state and context if you need to get that state lots of places, then you don't need anything else. And one thing that I'm really interested in right now is React Query, which I think that you'll like a lot. Why is React Query GitHub not the first thing? That's weird. React Query GitHub. I guess it's hard to win at that SEO juice. But yeah, so this is very interesting to me. So I would look into that. And I'll paste a link to that for you. Okay, can I do more smiley videos? I addressed that earlier. I don't think I'll do any more smiley videos. I don't know. If the video that I just made it gets 1 million views, then I will do more smiley videos. Right now, it's at 7,000. So you have your work cut out for you if you want me to make more of those. Okay, is unit testing useful when already Cypress e-tests are there for the UI? This is a great question that is answered by my blog post that compares the different levels. So go ahead and take a look at that. But the short answer to the question is they are absolutely useful. And actually, one thing that I should probably include in this, but I don't, is let's see what we can learn about testing from the wheel Kent Sudods. There we go. So check this out. And it's 5 minutes long. It talks about different levels of testing. And this was from a while back, but yeah, still relevant. But yeah, absolutely. Unit testing, integration testing, all the layers have different things about them that make them reasonable. For example, let's, and actually this is a really good quote from JB Rainsberger, who is one of the experts that I interview for testingjavascript.com. You can throw paint against the wall, and eventually you might get most of the wall, but until you go up to the wall with a brush, you'll never get the corners. And that's basically what unit testing is it's that little brush. And if you try to use that little brush to paint the whole wall, that's not going to work either. So yeah, you're going to want to have a combination of these as your approach. I think there's a bug in the example. Oh, that was while I was doing a demo thing. Okay. How would you test OAuth 2 authentication flow when your app is OAuth client and consists of SPA and REST API? That is a really tricky one to test. I've actually never tested OAuth 2 authentication flow before. What I would probably do is because Cypress cannot do that type of authentication across domains, and there's probably blog posts about how to work around that. But my first inclination would be to create a test that runs in Puppeteer, because Puppeteer doesn't suffer from that same problem. And I would just try to make that work. And I just have one test that does that. And then the rest of my tests would hit the API directly or create a mock user or something like that to do that authentication. Because and even if it wasn't that complicated flow and it was easy to do, you don't want to over test. And this is actually another blog post. And it's a mistake. Common testing mistakes. It is do repeat testing is what I call it. So give that a look. If you just go through the authentication flow for every single one of your tests, that is repeat testing, and it is not good. It will make your tests take forever, be really flaky. So avoid that. Okay. When should I run Cypress tests? It's too slow. I can't write test on every bug because it starts taking too much time to check what to test with Cypress. So I do recommend that your Cypress tests are higher level. They're user flows, not just a specific like, oh, this function returns this value or whatever. Like that's not what your end-to-end tests are for. Cypress end-to-end tests are for a full flow, full user flow. So you don't have as many of them as you do integration tests or unit tests. But they do cover a ton of your code. And as far as when to run them, I like to run them locally on commit, but that will get really slow really fast. And so generally I will go ahead and just run it on CI, but I will run it for every PR. If your test suite takes like an hour long or longer, then maybe you can run it just every couple hours or something and just do some critical things on PRs. But yeah, try to figure out how to make your test not take so long. With Cypress, you can run tests in parallel and stuff. You can make that work. So that's what I would do. Just upgrade your hardware and run things in parallel. Okay. Any advice to improve test performance? Running my tests using Create React app and testing library is very slow, like 10 seconds for a basic test. Okay, so if it's taking 10 seconds, then there is something amiss. I'm not sure what it is without an example, but it should absolutely not be taking that long. Like a single test should take less than 50 milliseconds for a typical test. So yeah, something is up, and you maybe should file a bug somewhere after doing some performance digging and stuff. Right now I'm using Istanbul's HTML report output to dig into specific files to understand where coverage is lacking. What other tools do you recommend to make the most out of this? That is exactly the tool that I recommend. There's nothing else. To clarify, I want to go beyond the overall coverage percentage since this doesn't tell the full story, in my opinion. You're right, it doesn't tell the full story. It doesn't tell the full story of the quality of your software, which is what I'm getting at in the how to know what to test blog post. I only use the coverage HTML Istanbul's report to identify places that are missing coverage. And I don't really have any other tools to recommend for you for that. It doesn't so you can, and I show this in testingjavascript.com, you can say, okay, this part of the code or files matching this glob specifically are super important, so we're going to have 100% code coverage on those, and then the rest of the app can have, X% code coverage. And so that can be useful for automating this kind of thing to make sure that, this utils file is super important or whatever, so we want to make sure we keep that coverage high there. But yeah, the problem is that code quality is sort of quantitative, but it's pretty qualitative, and you have to say, I couldn't count the number of times where I said, I had a test for that, but I just didn't think about that combination of interactions that could cause that kind of state bug. And in those kind of situations, then you want a state machine probably. But yeah, sorry, that's not exactly an answer, but hopefully. Yeah. How fast? Yeah, I do type pretty fast. I don't know, maybe like 80 words a minute or maybe more. I don't know. I haven't measured in a while, but yeah, I like to type. Video will be available at the same URL. Yep. We are friends and loving the stream. That's great. Could you recommend some resources that give fundamental knowledge about tests, less associated with specific libraries? Thanks for the content. Testing JavaScript. I keep telling people about this, and I don't know, maybe they don't believe me or something, but this has nothing to do with any libraries specifically, other than Jest, where we basically build a testing framework. But you could do this, apply these same principles to Mocha or any other testing framework. This one is using some tools for static code analysis. The concepts, there aren't as many concepts to pull from this. It's just like, hey, let's make the computer do some static code analysis for you. This one, we build Jest mocking capabilities in Node. And that will give you some fundamental understanding of how the mocking works, and just like what mocking even is. So yeah, there's that. This is really specific to Jest, but it's not specific to any other frameworks. So like we do use React as some examples in here, but like we're talking about like dynamic imports and Webpack loaders and stuff like that. So that's not really testing principles. This one, we actually do get quite a bit into testing principles, even though it's specific for React. And because this is using React, I created another, which is DOM testing library, to test any testing framework, or any framework, which is why I say that like it doesn't matter what frame, or it doesn't matter how you're getting things onto the DOM. If it gets onto the DOM, then we can test it using DOM testing library. And all of the same things that you learn from here are cross-applicable to any framework that you're using. However you get it onto the DOM, you could use Elm for all I care, and you can still test it with the testing library tools. Yeah, and then we get into testing node backends. This one actually gets into a lot of things, like a lot of core testing principles. And actually one other thing, this we talk about test-driven development in here as well. But this one, we talk about test object factories or object mothers. We talk about generated data. We do that here as well. And in here, I think. And in here, we also talk about test setup functions. So yeah, like there are principles all over this stuff, and it doesn't matter even if you're in JavaScript, like if you're in Go or whatever, like lots of these principles will cross apply. Yeah, it's great. And then these interviews are actually super, super high quality. It's like a really awesome podcast with all these people who are experts at testing. So hopefully that was helpful. ETE is an excellent way to get confidence quickly, assuming you have nothing in place and want to ensure that your most critical paths work. Couldn't agree more. I'm doing a great job. Thank you. That's nice of you. Do you recommend to write unit tests instead or intended to test the behavior or the implementation? We already have automation tests that covers the behavior side of things. Great question. I've got a blog post for you that tells you the dangers of testing implementation details. So that's great that you have automation tests, so like end-to-end tests to cover the behavior side of things, but that's the part that matters, right? So if you're starting to test implementation details, then you're basically writing your code twice, and so it's useless. So don't bother with that. If you feel confident enough that your application works with the automation test, then maybe don't write tests. Don't write any more. You don't need any more. Writing implementation details-based tests will not save you from any bugs, period. So yeah, keep away from those. When should we stop writing tests? So we're always balancing between writing tests as like a way to get confidence in the application we're shipping and writing code to actually ship our application. Which one of those is more important? Absolutely, shipping your application, way more important than writing tests. The only reason that we write tests is to make sure that we're confident that the thing we're shipping isn't broken. So once you feel pretty confident that the thing you're shipping isn't broken, then you don't need to write any more tests. But as you add new features and refactor things, change things, whatever, you're going to be needing to update tests. So you're pretty much writing tests so as long as you're making changes to the app. Now, if you write tests free of implementation details and you're only refactoring things, then you shouldn't have to change those tests at all, which is why it's really nice to write tests free of implementation details. So hopefully that was helpful. Juan, hello Kent, great work, very useful, thank you. Just today I had to test behavior of a modal when the user closed and confirmed. Do you recommend to do that flow in just one test or two different tests? That's a great question. I've got a blog post for that. It is fewer. Write fewer, longer tests. So this is a common situation where we've got something that we're testing, and then we have one it per assertion. And I explain in this blog post why that is a real problem, and instead recommend that we test entire flows. So a course loads and renders the course information. Boom, we're going to do all of this stuff right in there. It does so many things to make your tests easier and your error messages easier. So strongly recommend that you focus on use cases rather than lines of code, because when you do that, then you're going to write tests that are more resilient to refactorings, and your tests will run faster. They'll be more they'll work more in isolation, and yeah, you'll just wind up with a better test in general. So enjoy that. Do you use gherkin syntax for your tests? Don't see it in the blog. So let me just make sure. Because I have done this before. Yeah, it's the cucumber. So like given, when, then. So sometimes I do that. I don't like type it out in that way, and I don't really follow that format. But I am thinking about it, and I think we've got some examples. Maybe it's recipes. Examples. Yeah, sometimes we'll have a arrange act assert in the docs, but it looks like we don't put that in any of these. But I like following that kind of a flow, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about when I'm writing these tests. is arrange, act, assert, which is kind of given, when, then. Approach, yeah. There we go. Arrange, act, assert, which is actually kind of sidestepping that typical flow that people will do. I am fine doing more act, assert, sometimes even arrange again in a single test. So yeah, I don't really do it a whole lot. And yeah, that's the answer to the question. Is there a way to speed up the tests? Yes, I answered that on Twitter. It looks like you probably asked that here, and then notice I was going on Twitter, and then yes, on Twitter. No worries, we're good. Thanks, Mohammed. What if you update snapshots before testing? I'm not sure I understand the question. You typically don't want to update snapshots manually or anything. I'm a JavaScript developer. What's the best for me for JavaScript code tests? Okay, so I know I've said this a lot. You probably know this already. Testingjavascript.com, absolutely the best thing that you can do for your testing habits. I'm going to paste a link. Ta-da! And then I've got just a silly amount of material on my blog and on my YouTube channel and everything that is absolutely free that you can go learn about testing as well. Hey Chris, the channel is awesome. Cool. It's nice being friendly and nice. Whoa. Twitter, or not Twitter. That. YouTube is like jumping me around here. Okay. Do we test Redux selectors? No, not directly, but you will test them indirectly as you're testing Redux. So we were just on here, React Redux, and I show you how to do this on testingjavascript.com. I've got a bunch of videos that show you how to do this. But basically, you'll notice, whoa, does that zoom it for you? Yeah, it does, right? No? I can't tell. Yes, it looks like it does. Yeah, it does. Okay, good. Yeah, so here we have this render with Redux. We render the Redux provider that's coming from React Redux with our store. We can give us a store, or we create a store with our reducer from our app and some initial state. And so you can like set up your store if you want to for the test. And then we can return the store. So like sometimes you can assert on the store state, but I typically don't recommend that. Yeah, so then indirectly you render the thing that's using Redux, and then you start interacting with it, clicking on buttons and whatever, and you are going to test your selectors, your all of the Redux stuff is going to get tested by doing it that way. And your test will be way, way better off. So, and you can change from Redux to MobX to whatever, and your test should continue to pass and give you that confidence, which is like the whole reason we do this, which is great. Okay. We have what is that? 14,000? That's what it looks like. 14,000 unit tests. That's a lot. Will converting these to integration help speed things up, since much less integration tests will be able to cover the same thing? Okay, so I believe you're the same person who asked about compilation. Yeah. Okay, so first off, I'm going to tell you that unless you have something really weird configured, it should not be compiling the code individually for every unit test. So it should just compile it all and then run all of the tests. 14,000 unit tests is a lot. I don't think I've ever worked in a project that had that many unit tests. I don't think so. Yeah, so it makes sense to me that that's going to take some time. Converting them to integration tests probably will speed things up, I would imagine. And yeah, and you will have a lot fewer integration tests. So yeah. I think it's a different one. Oh, you were talking about stuff. Are data attribute selectors removed in production, thus limiting end-to-end tests runs in production? So you can do that. You have to configure tools to make those go away, and it's possible, but I don't recommend it. And I've got a blog post about this as well. I have so many blog posts. Okay, so this is resilience, making UI tests resilient to change. We talk about testing, and we talk about the where is it? Get by or label text. Hold on a second. Oh, here it is. Label, placeholder. Yeah, there we go. I should make that list more obvious. But yeah, so we have a recommendation of which queries that you should use in testing library. So start with label, then placeholder, text, and text, and then display value, and then alt text, title, role, and then test ID is at the very end. So avoid using test ID because the user doesn't care what the test ID is, neither should your test, but sometimes you just have to. And so that's this part explains like the justification for having it around. And here I show you a tool that you can use to remove it for production if you really want to, but I'm telling you, this is not your performance bottleneck. You do not need to bother with this. And if you keep them around, then you can run some tests in production, which I think is great. Some tests that use the data test ID. I promise you, it's not the reason your app is slow. So speed up other things before you start removing those test IDs. Great question. One thing I'm not sure about is the impact of large DOM nodes the integration test will be rendering. So yeah, so if you're rendering like an entire page just to test one little thing, then maybe don't render the entire page to test that one little. Your integration test will test the whole thing. Okay, so it's going to interact with that thing, then it's going to go around and it's going to do these things and make sure that they're all integrating together properly. And then if that little thing has a bunch of edge cases, those edge cases are going to be tested with unit tests. And so you're going to have fewer tests overall because you don't need to you may end up rendering more DOM nodes overall if you like counted all the DOM nodes you rendered, but probably not a lot more, and actually maybe less because you're going to be re-rendering some things less. I don't know. It kind of depends. I wouldn't worry too much about it. 14,000 unit tests is a lot. But yeah, if they're high quality tests, then they're giving you a lot of confidence. And yeah, I'm curious how long it actually takes to run all of your tests. Hi everyone. Anyone asked about when to test a component or element? Yeah, when to test. Yeah, so we kind of talked about that earlier, but you test it when you feel like you want to maintain confidence that it won't break when people make changes to it. So you test when you want confidence, I guess, is the simple answer. Cypress doesn't seem to play well with CI. Locally, it's fine. Headless introduce flake, and CI is just random. Do you have any tips to resolve the difference in test runs between different run types? So first off, you can't do video, and so you can like look at what the video is. I don't think that I definitely have experienced problems where it worked locally but not on CI, and it typically had to do with environment variables that were set locally that I forgot to set on CI or something like that. Yeah, I can't give you like a general answer to that. I know that like lots of people run it on CI, so I mean, it's probably not just you who struggle with this, but just know that it is possible because many people do run it on CI. Can't give you much more than that, sorry. Can we mock multiple API calls to an external API inside a function in Node.js? The answer is yes, you can. If you have a specific example that I can work through, then maybe I can help you with that. Assuming devs don't use IDs on a product, what is your opinion on using IDs versus using data attributes, label, blah, 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 blah. And that's what that blog post, and I don't know if I linked to it, so let me just grab that. Did I link to it? No, I did not. So go ahead and take a look at that. And I justify the reason to not use IDs. Yeah, you'll want to use data attributes and labels and text content. What's the difference between integration tests and E2E tests or integration tests coded in Jest? Integration is with Jest. Let me give you a link to this. So this is my testing trophy blog post I've referenced several times in the screencast. That'll give you the whole rundown of what the difference is. Cypress TDD is great. Yes, I agree. I call it Cypress-driven development, but you can call it Cypress TDD if you want. How many years should I learn to be a professional hacker? You can be one today. You can do it. It's you. Like, the world is your oyster. I don't know. I don't know. I've been doing this for like 6 years or something. Feel pretty professional. I don't know. There's no answer to that question. Sorry. Is your definition of integration test and E2E tests with a mock backend and vice versa? Okay, so yeah, in general, like go look at that blog post that I've referenced many times now, the Rofi one. But in general, my end-to-end tests have nothing mocked, except maybe they're using a test server that's not actually charging credit cards or something. And my integration tests have HTTP requests mocked. Other than that, they don't have anything. Integration tests don't have anything mocked. So that's kind of the difference. And typically my end-to-end tests are happy path, user flow kind of things. My integration tests are going to be happy path and some sad path stuff. And then my unit tests are going to do more of the edge case things and pure functions. And integration tests get into edge cases too, a little bit. Okay, I guess it is active after you log into your site. Please ignore. Okay. Can I fill up the OG meta tags on SSR without actual content? Yes, actually, Dave, we've done this. We did this at PayPal. We did this here. If we go to PayPal me, can't see dots. So this is an app that I built that used GraphQL. And if you look at the source, you'll notice that it actually just has a bunch of data in here. And it's all client rendered, but we have OG, all these OG tags. And so that's all server rendered. But then the actual app itself here, all of this stuff is client rendered. So I've definitely done that, and it works out great. Enjoy. What's the best way of testing React Native with testing library when you have TSX, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I see. So I'm not sure, actually. So I don't do React Native, but you could ask in Spectrum, and maybe some people would give you some opinions. Whatever you end up doing, follow this principle of co-location. It will save you a lot of headache. So try to get those files as close together as possible. Okay, what do you think about auto-generated tests? I think it's awesome. I love it. The more tests that I can have and not actually write, the better. Yep. So long as they're like actually useful tests. Sorry that you're struggling with Cypress and CI. Yeah, you can ask the project maintainers and stuff maybe on their support channels. Okay, what's the best setup for Cypress running in a Yarn workspace project with multiple separated apps? I've never done that, actually, so I don't really have anything to... No, actually, No, I did. I did do that. What did I do? I think I put it in... I think I put the tests in one package. Oh, shoot, I can't remember. This was at PayPal. Oh, I think, yeah, I can't remember. I'm sorry. I not enough to give you some actual recommendation, but it's possible. Do you recommend using just fetch mock? I typically don't use a whole lot of abstractions, especially for mocks, because mocks are normally pretty, like, okay, they're not easy. Sometimes they're pretty complicated. But I like seeing my mock, and I like having control over my mock. So I don't use abstractions for mocks, like, very often at all. Not abstractions that I built, or I didn't build myself. Okay, I have a React app that is pretty good unit test case for React and Redux, but my boss says to run these tests on live site after deploying in production as well. Is that even a thing? No, it's not. So what your boss wants is to make sure that you have production testing, and that's important. But you cannot do that level of testing in production, not reasonably anyway. Like you could expose things on window and whatever, but I don't recommend that. What you want to do is create some solid end-to-end tests that work in production and run them in production. And React is an implementation detail. Redux is an implementation detail. I've got a blog post about that. And so write some end-to-end tests that are totally agnostic to these things and then you can run it in production, and you'll be happier. Great questions. Wow, we're just loading in the question. This is great. Can you teach us JavaScript? Yes, I plan on teaching you JavaScript eventually. And if you want to, you can go to kentsydodds.com/workshops and then click on JavaScript. And these are the ones that I already have material for. You just click on one of them, come down here, fill in your name, and I will let you know when it's scheduled, and you'll get a discount. It'll be great when it's scheduled. I'm planning on doing more JavaScript workshops next year, so look forward to that. What would make Cypress tests so flaky that you have to run them over and over to pass? Yeah, well, I mean, there are some things that that can, but if you avoid writing, okay, so there are things that you can do to make Cypress tests less flaky, and I actually show you how to do that in testingjavascript.com. That's all I'm going to say about that. I don't think Chris is asking me about that. Yeah, I think he's asking somebody else. Okay, I have to give a tech talk, 15 minutes max, to my team, and I've chosen the testing library, woo, to encourage them to test their components. What are the most important things you would talk about? Thanks. So you could, maybe this can give you some inspiration. Confident React. So go to my talks page on my website, look for Confident React. I'll just give you a link. And you can watch one of these videos. And those are the things that I think are most important when talking about it. So this talk is more like, why is it so important that we are focused on getting confidence, and how do we go about doing that? And so it's not really, okay, let me show you the API for React testing library, whatever. It's mostly about, hey, listen, if you write your tests the right way, then they can actually be useful. And here's a tool that can enable you to have useful tests. So good luck on your talk. That's great. Coverage question. Oh, nice. Thanks. What is the recommended set of tools to test on UI on multiple browsers and platforms? I don't bother. So you can. This is what I recommend. First off, the differences between browser platforms today is sometimes you don't compile your code down far enough for IE 10, for example. And in that situation, you fix the configuration and you never touch it again, and you'll never have that problem again. Okay, that problem is solved. The other problem that you can have is the UI is rendered differently, because CSS is still sometimes a beast and not very nice to deal with, and the UI gets rendered differently. So you get that covered by having your Cypress test run in your for your app, and then in your Cypress test, you're using this tool called applitools. And what this tool does is, it's so cool. It'll take the DOM, it'll send it up to their servers, and they'll pull it up in their visual testing grid thing. They'll pull up that DOM. It is phenomenally good. It is so cool. And so you can have it in different sizes. You can have it on different browsers and whatever. And you're covering yourself in so many ways with that. It's phenomenal. So give that a look. Outside of that, I don't even bother testing other browsers. But I hear a lot of people really like Test Cafe. So if you want to look at that, then feel free. Okay, what is the best way you recommend to resolve file modules in a large-scale project? By resolve, I think you mean like imports and stuff. And I've got something that I've used for a while. Do I have folder structure? Yeah. So this is a thing that Ryan Florence made a really long time ago, and I kind of like it. It's a little too strict these days, but if you have a really large project and you're like, okay, we've got this whole part of it or whatever, then this file structure works out pretty well. And one thing that he has in here is this component, or this, where is it, shared directory. And so with the shared directory, any file that's next to it or below will be able to have access to these things as if they're in node modules. And so that's what this is talking about right here. dot dot whatever, that's a nightmare. So you use modules. Modules directories is just configured in Webpack to make it resolve just like it's in Node modules. It's pretty cool, and yeah, good luck with that. And I believe, yeah, so it just has the same type of configuration. With TypeScript, though, unfortunately, you can't just have it say, okay, all shared directories are going to be like node modules. You have to have it very specific for your paths configuration, which is super annoying. But you have to say, okay, this shared directory and this shared directory, this one. Kind of annoying, but it works. So enjoy that. Okay, you mentioned going back with React State and something like Apollo for backend data for management. If I'm not using GraphQL, would you recommend any other solution? Yeah, React Query was what I was talking about. And it's great. So give React Query a look. That would be my next thing that I'm going to look at. I know the maintainer. He's fantastic, really smart person. He's created a lot of things. So yeah, give that a look. When you use the render method and that component renders a UL with a bunch of LIs, how do you access a specific LI with just a data test ID? Do you need to create a unique test ID for each LI? So this would be easier with an example, but let's see. Let me see if I can get something just really quick right in here. So work this thing. It is a template. So you've got a UL, UL, and then in here, let's say you have an array of 1, 2, 3 that you map, and then li e. Okay, cool. So what you would do if you wanted to get a specific one, first off, like we could actually get it. Oh, my computer is freaking out. What's happening? Okay, I'm gonna close this. Yikes. What is going on? And I don't know if I'm like choppy for you or whatever. That's so strange. It just like spiked. Hold on a second. Let me get activity monitor going. This is what happens when you got live streams. Okay, come on, activity monitor. Where are ya? Okay, so I'll kind of answer that question while it comes. Oh, there it is. Yeah, and I'll answer that question while it's bringing up all the info. So yeah, the general idea here is we want to try to find it the same way that the user is going to find it. So if you've got a list of like 30 items, how is the user going to find the specific item that your test is trying to find? They're probably going to find it by its number or maybe by the text content. And so that's how your test should try to find it. Yeah, it looks like it's Chrome that's causing the trouble here. So let me find out what the problem is. And if that doesn't work out well for you for some reason, then you can use a data test ID and you can generate the data test ID. It can be a dynamic value. So you can say data test ID list item 3 or whatever. Oh, come on now. Okay, Google Chrome. I'm just gonna close Chrome entirely, and maybe that will make my computer super fast again. My goodness, this is an outrage. Nikes. Quit. What is going on? Let me get the Chrome helper to go away. Okay, and gonna force close you, even though I closed Chrome already. Okay, force quit. And yeah, I'm pretty sure the live stream is not causing the problem. You see, oh man, what? I'm sorry, folks. This is just as annoying to you as it is to me. Oh, you know what? It is the live stream thing freaking out my computer or something. No, it's Windows Server. Okay. Well, we gotta wrap this thing up here pretty soon. So I'm so sorry about this, but hopefully it was kind of interesting and fun, and you take an opportunity to take a look at testingjavascript.com. I've worked super duper hard on this. It has been, it's been an amazing ride, an awesome challenge, fun, and the sale is going to be available just for the next 24 hours, or I guess it'll be till tomorrow night. So here, I'm going to try and pull up YouTube and see if I can get any of the last comments, because I feel bad that I missed some questions. Pull this up. Yeah, this is no fun. Oh, at least it's not like choppy. Okay, let me just answer the questions here, and then and you know what? We can just do, man, this is outrageous. Just me. It won't look as good, but there we go. Yeah, and my camera is all like, oh, I'm gonna be super blurry. Okay. Yeah, so sorry about this. What a pain in the rear. Answer some more questions. Okay, yeah, so that was the data test ID. You can generate those. Have you worked as a quality engineer before, or are you a dev who actually cares about testing? I am the latter. I have never worked as a quality engineer before. I am a dev who cares about testing. Would you focus your end-to-end tests more on success path, or would you recommend focusing on error cases? So end-to-end tests are all about the success path. That's the idea behind end-to-end tests for me. My integration tests and my unit tests are going to cover the edge cases for me. So, slow tests. Oh, yeah. Do you think sometime soon programmers will get to use an online operating system? I don't know. Yeah, sorry. What are your opinions on testing on real browsers as opposed to testing using JS DOM? So, if we were to test exactly the way that our users are using our application, then we're going to test using we're going to do manual testing using our same device that our end users are going to use, and we're going to go through the same weird things that our end users are going to use, right? So we're not doing that. And so by not doing that, we're taking a step back on the spectrum of how similar our tests are to the types of things that we're running. Or the types of things that our users are doing. And so we're already making trade-offs. And so I see just DOM as a similar trade-off to not testing in the browser. And when you make a trade-off, you need to come with some benefit. So by running our tests automatically, we're getting the benefit of being able to get our tests actually running quickly. I actually wrote about this just recently in a broadcast that I sent to my subscribers. So hopefully that was helpful to some of you. I've done manual testing before as a dev, and we would halt all development, and everybody would have to go do these manual tests, and I hated it. Nobody liked it. It was super not fun. And with that, I would sometimes tests would fail, and I would just mark them as passed because I just wanted to move on and not worry about creating a Jira ticket for it. I know I'm a terrible person, but computers don't do that. They will mark it as failed, and you'll have to go fix it. So that's why we automate our tests. Well, if I am running all of my tests in a browser, then I don't get the benefits that I get from using Jest. Like the mocking capabilities are a huge one. And the speed, the watch mode, like running everything in parallel like it does, those are enormous benefits that are definitely worth running in JS DOM for me. So that is what's going on there. Okay, so okay. Have you ever had a chance to work with React Relay? I'm having a hard time finding good materials on how to implement Relay compliant backend database and frontend tests. I haven't, sorry. I can't. How would you test an application which heavily relies on charts? I'd probably test the charting library in isolation and then mock out the charts, or just send them data that is easy for them to render. And then have like a couple integration tests to make sure that I'm integrating those things correctly. Like your end-to-end tests are probably going to cover that integration, so you're probably fine. What's the best way to test third-party components such as infinite scrolling component, or should I leave it to end-to-end tests? So your third-party components should be tested themselves, and all you need to make sure is that you're integrating with those components properly, and your end-to-end tests will often catch that, and you can mock it out in integration and unit. But I'd only, I might do that for unit, but for integration level testing, I'd probably not mock it unless I have some good reason to mock it, like it's really slow or something like that. Or it's hard to, I don't know, that's probably it. How do you write resilient tests with get by label or get by text with translation? Our copywriters sometimes change the wording of a cell to an action, which makes our test break. Okay, so this is a really common question. So if you're a translator, so first off, you in your tests, you just make all of the translation stuff actually compile to the English version or whatever the default language version is, and that's what you write your test against. And if your copywriter changes email to username or username to email, then you actually want to know about that. That probably changes things. Maybe you need to change the input type and to manage that kind of change. So yeah, it's the kind of change, those are the kinds of change that I actually do want my test to fail for. Sometimes there's like some copy that doesn't matter a whole lot, and your copy editor is changing it all the time, whatever. So for those, then you can actually be pretty generous with the regex that you provide so that it matches in general. So instead of next step, they change it to continue. In that case, it'd just be you'd have to change it. But maybe if it changed from step 2 to next step, then you just look for the text that said step or something. But yeah, I don't really worry too much about that. Your test absolutely will break as your copy editor changes things. But lots of the time, those kinds of breakages are things you want to know about. And all the time, they're really easy to adjust your test for. So I don't worry about it. Every time I open this up again, YouTube scrolls me all the way to the bottom. So sorry about that. I think I may have skipped this one. Would you focus your end-to-end tests on more success path? Or, oh no, I did answer that one. How do you use GitHub Action to mock with Mocha and Chai testing an Express API with Mongo? That's a really big question, and so I don't. So I wouldn't use Mocha and Chai. I would use Jest first of all. And GitHub Action, that's like basically you can have CI for GitHub, right? I use Travis, but yeah. So an Express API with Mongo, I teach you how to do that with testingjavascript.com. We don't use Mongo, but the same principles all apply. And so yeah, you can look at testingjavascript.com for that. But basically, for your unit test, and you're going to be mocking out the database. So you'll have some module between you and the database actions. You just mock that out. And then for integration tests, you'll just have to spin up the database and have real data in there. Could I come to Norway and host a training? Well, yeah, I mean, I think that could be fun. I would like to. I am coming to Finland and I'll be doing a training there. I'm going to Amsterdam and doing a training. I don't travel a whole lot. I try to avoid traveling because I have a family and I love them and I want to be with them. So, yeah. So it's unlikely that I'll be coming anytime soon. Sorry. How can we mock multiple external API calls inside a single function in Node? Um, Well, I can do that better with an example. If you have an example, I can show you. We do that in testingjavascript.com several times in the Node stuff. We have like 3 different databases we're talking to, and so we're going to mock each one of those. So you can go learn about that there. What do you think about serverless? I love it. I assume that local testing is difficult because the API servers are in the cloud. Yes, so testing serverless is something I have not yet explored. And it's I think it's an unsolved problem currently, or the solution is pretty not good. So yeah, if you want to work on that problem, that'd be awesome. I don't have too much to say about that. How do you test Next or Gatsby apps? The same way I test anything else. As far as like pulling them up as like a full page, that's a little tricky because navigating between the pages is less straightforward, and I haven't actually done that, but I believe that Gatsby has some documentation on how you can go about doing that. Love from Pakistan. Sweet. What do you mean by mobile testing automation? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Because I don't think I said anything. Mobile testing automation. Okay. Is your personal site open source? Yes, it is. Just look for kentcdodds.com on my GitHub. I would love to see how you implemented things like your blogs, links, and link shortening, etc. So I actually have a dev tip on link shortening, and I would show you a link if my computer were not freaking out, but it is. So that's what we're dealing with here. Yeah, so if you just search for Kent C. Dodds short URL or URL shortener, then actually, you know what? I think I'm going to chat this. I think I can chat this. Okay, chat publicly. Why is my keyboard not coming up? Why does the internet hate me right now? Okay, that's super annoying. My, okay, there's my keyboard. Okay, keyboard can open, I promise. And here we are again. So okay, it's not coming up on YouTube. I cannot send it to you. I am so sorry. But yeah, if you go to kcd.im/shortener, then you'll see a YouTube video where I show you how that's set up. Okay. I follow an Angular style guide folder structure and it works great. Well, that's good. People helping me with my really slow computer. I don't know what happened. Like it spiked and now it's like still super slow. I don't even know. Yeah, I don't know. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so somebody shot me a question in the React testing library Spectrum. I will try to get to it. I can't make any promises, but I'll try to get to it. Thanks for making this AMA. You're welcome. Sorry that it is not so awesome because the computer issues. General question, but any advice for testing feature flag violations? Feature or variations? I was like, what's the violation? Yeah, so I've never. So I definitely have used feature flags before. And we had an abstraction, and I mocked out that abstraction, and that's how I did that. As far as like end-to-end testing of that, we also had a query string that you could specify to enable them, which only worked. Well, actually, I think it worked in production too. But yeah, so you just load up Cypress with that query string, and or if you didn't want to use a query string, you could use a global variable or something. You'd say, if Cypress, then expose this global variable, and then you can call it in your tests. So that'd work probably pretty well. What should I look out for in my short jest test? Seem to take a long time to run. So I know that there are ways to debug that, and in my current setup right now with my computer being problematic, I can't really give you a demo of that or anything. But yeah, Google around for performance debugging of Jest tests. You're not the only one who's had that problem. But yeah, it often has. Yeah, I can't pinpoint a specific reason why that problem exists. Sorry, but you're not the only one. Do you think you need? Do you think? Okay, I'm back. I am so sorry. Okay, so I figured out what the problem was. So I have this little thing where Thunderbolt goes into this thing, and then a million other wires can come out of it. And one of those wires goes to power, and I'd switched that wire with a different Thunderbolt or whatever, not Thunderbolt, the USB-C thing, which doesn't go to power, and that's why things weren't working. So I wasn't actually charging, even though it said that I was. I don't know. Super annoying. Super sorry that happened. I know this is not a fun experience for anyone. Well, maybe it's fun to watch me struggle with this silly stuff. But yeah, sorry. Okay, let's see. Where did we leave off with this? We don't like how many people are here. Oh, we still have people watching. No way. Thanks for sticking it out. Whew. Okay, so it was the shortener, that URL. I wanted to send that to somebody who wanted to know about my short URLs. I feel like there was something else I wanted to send, but okay, yeah, my personal site, GitHub, incydodds.com. That's where my personal site is, and you can learn a lot from that too, which is fun. Oop, whoops. We're gonna do this. Okay. So, is there a difference between unit testing in React and React Native in terms of syntax? No, there's not. Now the API, okay, it's really important. A lot of people get this confused. Syntax is not the same as API. So syntax, it's all just JavaScript. That's a JavaScript syntax. That's what it is with JSX. The API is slightly different, but basically the same. They have a couple of different, like instead of get by label text, there's get by accessibility hint, stuff like that. But yeah, basically the same thing. It's that same learn once, write anywhere thing. You don't use a div, you use a view in React Native. So yeah, that kind of stuff. Okay. What are your thoughts about David Heinemeier Hansen? Heinemeier, yeah. Hansen opinions about TDD. I actually DHH, yeah, of course. DHH and I are way on the same page with TDD. It is great and useful sometimes, but the communities have taken it way too far, especially when you're mandating it on a team or something. I think that's silly. Thank you, David. Okay, I'll try to get to that if I can. General question. Oh yeah, I did answer those. I skipped over some of these. Sorry. I answered some of these. Oh yeah, follow up on the JS DOM. NodeTap can run on a real browser. It also has parallel testing. Any other gains you get on testing JS DOM with Jest? So if NodeTap can run in a real browser, can it run like in parallel in a real browser? Because that would be kind of cool. The biggest thing with JS DOM is the watch mode is out of this world awesome. Like the ability to run only the files that are impacted by the changes, only the tests that are impacted by the changes you've made. That's really like cannot be overstated, especially in big projects. And And then the mocking capabilities. I don't know what NodeTap is doing for mocking, but Jest has got mocking in such a good spot. So yeah, mocking is awesome there. Okay, let me just, what am I doing? Oh man. What should I put here? TestingJavaScript.com. There you go. Okay. Why do I prefer Jest over Mocha? Jest has so many features built in that are just so good. That's why. Lots of reasons. So like the mocking, the parallel runs, the watch mode is amazing. Snapshot testing can be useful. And lots of these things you can kind of, and code coverage is built in, compilation is built in, and lots of the things you can kind of tack on to Mocha and make it work, but it's just not quite there in that regard. So when doing a Jest mock for mocking, it mocks the whole module. Is there an approach for mocking selected? Yes. I need a place for code here, so let me fork this. Sign in with GitHub. I guess I need to do that. What, are you for real? Okay, I'm not going to do that right now, but basically you're going to have jest.mock thing, and then in here you're going to return your mock, right? Well, you can also do jest.require actual thing, and then you just overrides, right? So that's what you do. Pretty cool. Kind of nice. Love it. Let me bump that up. Ta-da! So there's that. We're almost done here. Any idea how to test a proxy middleware that uses HTTP proxy middleware package? I would probably, so if you, yeah, I would probably do the integration test for that. And that basically, and I show you how to do that in this module, an integration test. And you just hit the endpoint and expect it to come back and do the thing that you want it to do. So that's what I would do. Are there tests you could have written for everything that just happened to your computer? Unfortunately, no. So I'm using this battery app thing that is, by Cinderesaurus. And it always says 1 hour and 12 minutes until full charge. I don't know where it's getting that information, but it is. And it was saying that it was charging when it actually was not. So maybe he could have written some tests. Here's the actual battery thing. And here it actually says 3 hours and 51 minutes until full. So maybe I'm not giving this some permission that it needs or something. I don't know. But yeah. And it's only taking that long because I'm live streaming right now. This thing charges like a beast, and it has a super big battery. That's why I was able to live stream as long as I was with no charge. That was amazing. Okay, any resources you can point me to as someone who just started out learning how to do testing? Boom, I found it. It's right here. This is the resource. Isn't that cool? TestingJavaScript.com. This is the resource for learning about testing. And for the next day, you have a huge discount. You definitely want to give that a look. Other than that, you can check out my blog. kcd.im/search will take you to just the giant list of all of my blog posts. And you can fill that out there, and that's fun. And then my YouTube channel has quite a bit of content on testing as well. So yeah, good luck on that. Any other questions before I wrap this up? I'm super apologetic, super sorry about the weirdness of getting my my computer problems. I'm glad that I figured out why it was going so slow, because I was worried that it was like, oh no, I can't do OBS or something. That would be a real bummer. But no, it was just battery problems. It wasn't charging. And now it's charging. Okay, just bought it. Hey, thanks. Seems to be no account. Email just has invoice. So yeah, your account is your email. So when you buy a ticket, then you get access, and you just type in your email here, and it'll send you a login link. So that's how you do that. Type it in there. It'll send you a login link, and you'll be logged in for a time period. Which JavaScript framework do you think is popular in the open source community for building testing projects for a newbie like me? Okay, so React is absolutely the king of popularity contest. I think it has 5 times the number of downloads as Vue, or something like that. Vue is awesome. It is great. But yeah, React has more job openings, more everything. There are so many more React things going on. For testing, you want React Testing Library. I'll teach you how to do that here. Create React App is an awesome tool that you want to look into. And Create React App just released a new version last night that bakes React Testing Library into the framework. So you're going to like that. And the Gatsby project recommends it. The React core team members recommend React Testing Library. And I'm the author of React Testing Library, and I teach you how to use it right here on testingjavascript.com. So have fun with that. Okay, I'm going to do just one more thing here. Oh, I'm incognito. That's why. I was like, why am I not logged into anything? Okay, so yes, that is, and now everybody knows my phone number. Thank you, Twitter. Okay. So if we go to my profile, I just tweeted about this right here. I just want to make sure I didn't miss any questions. Yeah, okay, I got all the questions there. Any more questions here? When will the next live stream be? I don't know. I'm going to be redoing this whole office. It's going to be so much better. You're going to love it. It's going to be beautiful. So that means I got to take down all this stuff. I won't be live streaming for little while. Yeah, so sorry about that. Any opinions on Luna? It can run in parallel in the browser, blah, 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 blah. Luna, well, testing. Yes, I have heard of this. You just export functions. That's cool. Yeah, I don't know. Seems interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see any reason to switch. Didn't look like there was any reason to switch over what I have. All right. Well, thanks for joining me for the live stream. Sorry it was a little bumpy. And I will be doing some more live streaming in the future. You're going to enjoy that. But for now, I'm going to sign off. This was fun. I hope you have a wonderful day. And I will see you all later. See ya.